Hello and welcome to the stamping technique video on ombre stamping. The supplies you're going to need for this are cardstock, a couple colors of ink. I like to start with just two, and it's easiest when you're starting to pick two colors from the same color family, a lighter color and a darker color, a sponge dauber of some sort or some kind of a blending sponge, and then a stamp. You can use either red rubber or photopolymer, and I also find that it's easiest to see the results of the technique if you pick a stamp that has some bigger surface area. So let's go ahead and get started. There are multiple ways that you can do ombre stamping. For the purposes of this video, I'm trying to keep it a little bit more beginner friendly. So if you have never done this before, I want to make this really easy and not scary to try. It is a very easy technique, and it's fun to just play and practice and see how your various colors are going to look together. And I do suggest starting with a couple colors from the same color family so that you can kind of see that blend. You know, an ombre is going from light to dark. It could be all in the same color family, or it could even kind of almost look like a rainbow by the time you're done with it. And you can really blend as many colors as you want. So it really depends on what you want your outcome to look like. But again, as a technique, just teaching this for the first time, if you're just beginning, I suggest starting with two colors. I personally like to take my lightest color, this is Pool Party, and I'm going to ink up my entire image. This is the Upsy Daisy image. It's an old or retired image from Stampin' Up. Just going to ink the whole thing. And then I take my darker color and I'll ink part of this stamp. You can really ink any part that you want. You can do top half, bottom half, kind of do an angle on the side, just kind of whatever. Just give it a try and see what you like. I think for this one I'm going to ink the top part. So I'm just kind of coming down part way. And I can see that there's a darker color here and a lighter color here. Then I'm going to take my sponge dauber and I'm going to just kind of tap between the two colors where they're blending. That'll just kind of help make that line a little bit softer between the two colors, not quite as harsh of a line between the two. And then we can stamp that right onto our cardstock. And then you can see the results. Let me hold that up a little bit. You can see how it's darker on the top and it fades down to that lighter color. Really pretty. Just such a fun outcome. I'll show you some examples when we get to the end here, but I do want to now show how you can do this with two colors that are not in the same color family. So I'm going to wipe off my stamp and we'll stamp one more sample here. All right, for the second sample, I'm actually going to be using Daffodil Delight and Pretty Peacock. So I kept the Pretty Peacock, so I'm going to keep the same sponge dauber. And I should just kind of back up and say, when I start with the lightest color inking up my stamp, that's because I wouldn't want to start with the Pretty Peacock and then put my lighter color Pool Party or Daffodil Delight into that, because I would get that Pretty Peacock into the ink pad. I'm getting a little bit of the lighter color onto this one, but it's really not going to show because it's so much darker. So just kind of be aware of that. I'm going to ink up my stamp now with the Daffodil Delight, just the whole entire surface. Okay. And then this time I'm going to ink the bottom portion with the Pretty Peacock. Okay. Now, little bit of color theory. If you mix yellow and blue, you're going to get green. So with my sponge dauber, I'm again going to just kind of tap between the two. I'm kind of going back and forth just a teeny bit. I don't want to, you know, be too dramatic about it, but I'm trying to make a nice blend just right where the two meet. And stamp that down. And now you can see we actually kind of end up with three colors, the yellow, green, and that yellow, the Daffodil Delight, a nice green in between, and then that Pretty Peacock. Okay, so I just want to show a couple different samples of cards that I made using an ombre technique. These two cards here, I use the same exact stamp, and I based the colors on the Designer Series paper. And I just wanted you to kind of see the impact that each have using either colors in the same color family, like this Pool Party and Shaded Spruce, or when you go more with something that's a little bit further apart, like the Poppy Parade and Petal Pink. Both look really pretty. You can see that there's kind of that ombre going from a lighter to a darker, and it just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. So there's one sample of something to try. And then the last thing I wanted to show was this card that I did a video on a little over a year ago. I will link that video in case you wanted to see in detail how I made this. This was with the Changing Leaves stamp set, and I used Night of Navy, Lost Lagoon, and Pool Party. So it's very similar to this one that we did, except I used Night of Navy instead of the Pretty Peacock. And I did add that third color, but as you can see, it's not real visible. So sticking with just two colors is really probably just as impactful as trying to mix a third color in on something like this, where the colors were really from the same color family. So anyway, you can check that out. I'll link that. And there's just a couple different examples of some ombre stamping. I really do hope that you give this technique a try, that you have fun with it, you try different color combinations, and if you do, please share it on your social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Tag me at Leah Faye Handmade. I would love to see what you're making. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I do hope that you have a great rest of your day.